few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union buildings. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and Police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before they would not have saluted but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, and gold of the new South African flag. So, my dear students, just after the newly elected president's address to the audience, about which we have read in a previous paragraph, there was an impressive display of fighter jets, helicopter, and soldier transporters, which raised everyone's heads up in the sky. It symbolized perfection as well as military's respect and obedience towards the free country. The high commanders who have won medals for their bravery also saluted and promised their loyalty. Nelson Mandela mentions here that he was well aware that these commanders who were now saluting him would have arrested Mandela under the previous rule, as during the oppressive white supremacy he was considered to be a criminal. The air show finally ended with a formation of the South African flag in the sky from the smoke beneath the jets. So, this is what we have learned from this particular paragraph of the text. Now, let us consider some of the key words present in this part of the text. Look at this word first. We all lifted our eyes in awe, which means in amazement, in wonder. Spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers, which means there was an impressive display of the South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers. Next is the word bedecked, which means decorated with or adorned with. The word chevron refers to a pattern in the shape of a V. Trail means series or chain. Look at the picture over here. This is Impala jets, which refers to the South African military aircraft. Alright. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of whites singing Nkosi Sikelel' Afrika and blacks singing the stem, the old anthem of the Republic. Although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. So here Nelson Mandela brings to light another very significant moment of the inauguration ceremony. Alright, and this relates to the playing of the two national anthems, with the whites singing Nikosi Sikalai Africa and the blacks singing the stem, the old anthem of the Republic. Now, my dear students, let me tell you something more about these two national anthems. The stem is a former national anthem of South Africa. It was the sole national anthem from 1957 to 1994. After the end of apartheid in the early 1990s, it was retained as a co-national anthem along with Nkosi Sikelel Africa from 1994 to 1997, when a new hybrid song incorporating elements of both songs was adopted as the country's new national anthem, which is still in use today. And let me tell you that Nkosi Sikelel Africa was adopted as South African national anthem in the year 1997. Alright, so on that particular occasion of the inauguration ceremony of Nelson Mandela, there was a very beautiful sight. And that beautiful sight relates to the playing of the two national anthems, both by the whites as well as by the blacks. Alright, although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem they once despised, they would soon know the words by heart. Now, Nelson Mandela states that although both the groups did not know the lyrics of the anthem which they once despised or disliked, but Mandela sounds very confident and hopeful that they would soon know the words by heart. So, Nelson Mandela felt quite assured that a time would definitely come in the future when all the people of South Africa would try to assimilate the words of the national anthems and then learn it by heart. So he envisions in his mind a moment in the near future when everybody in that beautiful land would try to assimilate and learn and then love the national anthems of one another. So this is what we have learned from this particular part of the text. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. In the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War and before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own land. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all peoples, regardless of the color of their skin. So, my dear students, what we get to learn from this text is that on the day of the inaugural ceremony, Nelson Mandela was filled with a sense of history. So his mind was flooded with memories of the days of the past when This whole system of apartheid cropped up as a dark episode in the history of South Africa. It resulted in inequality and inferior treatment of dark-skinned people. They were deprived of their basic fundamental rights and privileges. As a result of this, one of the world's most brutal and inhuman society was born. This started even before Nelson Mandela was born, and this system created an atmosphere of extreme cruelty and injustice for a particular part of the community. Now, when he is in his eighth decade as a man, Nelson Mandela, along with countless others, have transformed this entire system into a completely new one. One that is based on equality and peace, and one that treats humans as humans, irrespective of their color, caste, gender, or age. So, my dear students, here I would like to draw your reference to Anglo-Boer War. Alright? The South African War, also called the Boer War or Anglo-Boer War, was fought between Britain and the self-governing Afrikaner colonies of the South African Republic and the Orange Free State. The Boer Wars were significant in defining modern South Africa. The peace treaty in 1902 brought the British and Boers together in an uneasy alliance, allowing the formation of a unified South Africa. Alright, so here basically what we have learned is that Nelson Mandela remembers the bygone days of the past, and he says about the past history of the black people of South Africa when they were discriminated. And now he says that the entire system had been overturned or reversed forever. In place of the previous system of domination, now there is going to be a new beginning. Alright, and this new beginning is marked by a recognition of the rights and freedoms of all peoples, regardless of the color of their skin. Alright? That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people, people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. So, my dear students, Nelson Mandela states that this particular auspicious occasion would not have seen the light of the day without the sacrifices of countless other people. Alright? So he says, this equal and free country was, after all, a result of the sacrifices of so many other people who have fought relentlessly all their lives for this particular day. Alright? I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. So, Nelson Mandela felt on that particular day that he was After all, the sum total of all those African patriots who had gone before him. So this means that Nelson Mandela had drawn inspiration from all those African patriots. He had gathered his courage and power from all such great people, and thus he wishes to make them proud. Alright, that long and noble line ended and now began again with me. Of course, that particular long and noble line had ended, but it had again begun with him. Alright. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and that they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. So Nelson Mandela felt deeply pained that he was not able to thank them personally. He wishes if he could thank them all, but unfortunately they did not live to see the outcome of their persistent struggle. Alright, so Nelson Mandela says here that those great patriots were not able to see what their sacrifices had brought about. And whenever he thinks about this, a sense of despair, a sense of pain dawns on him. Alright, so this is what we have understood from these few lines of the text. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. But the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect, and that was that it produced the Oliver Tambos, the Walter Sisulus, the Chief Lutulis, the Yusuf Dados, the Bram Fishers, the Robert Subukwes of our time. Men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil, but I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. So, my dear students, Nelson Mandela here talks at length about the policy of apartheid and its effects. He begins by saying that this policy of apartheid created a deep scar in his country and its people. So, the kind of effect that it created in his country and its people was a long lasting wound or scar. Alright, all of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt. So it will take them a lot of time to move on in life, forgetting the bitter past. So here the words profound hurt brings to our mind the deep sense of pain, suffering, and injustice which was meted out to the black people by the white people. Alright. However, the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect. Now, Nelson Mandela states that This hard time had no doubt its tremendous negative impacts. But then it also had another unintended effect. And what was that exactly? He refers to the point that it also exposed a lot of strong and courageous men, people who stood up against the prevailing injustice and cruelties and raised their voice. So, with a deep sense of pride, he takes the names of these people like Oliver Tambos, the Walter Sissulus, the Chief Lutulis, the Yusuf Dados, the Bram Fishers, the Robert Sobukwe's, men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that their like may never be known again. So, all these people were men of extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity that maybe their like will never be known again in the history of the world. Alright. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. Maybe it requires such extreme and absolute level of unjust treatment to produce such great heroes. So he is indirectly linking the heights of character of all these people to the depths of oppression which they had suffered in the hands of the white people. Alright. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil. But I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. Now, Nelson Mandela says with a note of pride that South Africa is no doubt rich in minerals and gems, but its greatest strength lies in its people, who are undoubtedly finer and truer than the purest of diamonds. So, this is what we have learned from this particular part of the text. Now, let us have a look at the trail of all such men of extraordinary character who have had influenced in the history of South Africa. How so? Because all these people had contributed immensely in the revolt against the system of apartheid. Okay, so let us know a little bit about these people. First, it is Oliver Tambo, a South African anti-apartheid politician and revolutionary. Next, Walter Sisulu, South African political activist, a political mentor of Nelson Mandela, and a prominent African National Congress member who helped lead the battle against apartheid. Albert John Luthuli, Zulu chief, teacher and religious leader and president of the African National Congress in South Africa, the first African to be awarded a Nobel Prize for Peace in 1960 in recognition of his non-violent struggle against racial discrimination. Next of all, Yusuf Muhammad Dado, a South African communist and anti-apartheid activist. Abraham Bram Fisher, remembered as a hero in the struggle against apartheid. Robert Sobukwe, a prominent South African political dissident and teacher, who founded the Pan-Africanist Congress in opposition to the South African apartheid system. So, as we all can see, these are the heroes in the battle against the system of apartheid. And Nelson Mandela says with a sense of gratitude that whatever they had been able to achieve, it's all because of the immense contributions made by so many people in the history of South Africa. All right. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So, dear students, Nelson Mandela here reaffirms that he gained the requisite strength to stand against all the evils and injustice from all those great nationalists of whom he has made a glowing tribute a little while ago. People who have even risked their lives for the sake of freedom and endured any kind of ill treatment which was meted out to them, never giving up on their efforts to bring about a change in the society. These people displayed an exemplary strength of character and mind, which is beyond our imagination. They were literally not shaken by any difficulties in their relentless pursuit of the desired goal, which was to establish a society devoid of discriminations of any kind. Even in the face of difficult times, they remained as resolute and steadfast as they could be. And so Nelson Mandela rightly acknowledges their invaluable contribution to the making of a new South Africa. Alright? Then Nelson Mandela goes on to say that he had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. According to him, the brave man is not one who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. A gem of truth indeed, isn't it, my dear students? So, this is what we have learned from this particular text.